Senate Bill 104 by Senator Steinberg, an act relating to employment.
Thank you very much, Madam President and members. This bill, Senate Bill 104, is my third attempt to give the hardest working individuals in California another option to organize themselves within a union. This bill, SB 104, permits agricultural employees to select their labor representatives by submitting a petition to the Agricultural Labor Relations Board along with representation cards signed by a majority of the bargaining unit. Once the validity of the cards is confirmed by the ALRB, the labor organization would be certified as the exclusive bargaining representative. Opponents to this measure oppose in large part because they believe in the sanctity of the secret ballot. This bill does not eliminate the secret ballot process as a method to select labor representation. It simply adds this new process as an option. Why this bill? The current law, the ALRA, passed during Governor Brown's first term as governor in the 1970s, was a good law, is a good law, but it assumes that all participants in these critical elections are on an even playing field. The assumption is that individuals voting in these elections, conducted by the ALRB, are free to contemplate the pros and cons of their decision, and that they are free from the weighted influence and feelings of intimidation from their employers leading up to the election. The evidence over 30-plus years in California is to the contrary. There are countless cases and countless stories of farm workers who are told that if they vote to join a union, they will be out of a job the next day. They are told they will be reported to immigration. They are told that their family members will lose their job. This is a simple, sensible, righteous piece of legislation that does not eliminate the secret ballot, but gives farm workers another option to choose a collective bargaining representative. I look forward to the debate, and I urge an aye vote.
Senator Steinberg, you may close.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and certainly, Senator Harman, if you or any members of those of the opposition who want to talk about amendments to this bill that would bring you along in support, I certainly would entertain any such discussion. But let's go back to the core of the matter here. And I will resist the great temptation of commenting, especially this week, on the fervence by which many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle speak about the importance of elections and secret ballots. I will resist that temptation. But I want to close with something very different, and maybe something that you haven't heard here before. What is the single most important proposition that the conservative movement and the Republican Party have put on the ballot over the last 30 years in California? The second most important. The first, obviously, was Prop 13. The second was Proposition 218. You remember that in the late 1990s, that restricts the ability of local governments to collect taxes or assessments without a vote of the people. It was put on the ballot in November of 1996. It amended the state constitution. Now you may ask, how does that relate to this piece of legislation? Let me read from Prop 218. In order for a city or a county or a special district to be able to assess a tax or an assessment, it must do the following. It must mail the voters in a respective district, and that mailing requires the following. Each notice mailed to owners of identified parcels within the district shall contain a ballot. The agency, it goes on, shall not impose an assessment if there is a majority protest. A majority protest exists if, upon the conclusion of the hearing, ballots submitted in opposition to the assessment exceed ballots in favor of assessment. In tabulating ballots, and this is the key point, the ballot shall be weighted according to proportional financial obligation of the affected property. How can you count the ballots under Proposition 218 using property value without correlating the vote a person casts with the property they own? The fact of the matter is you can't. And so talk about a secret ballot election. But the second most important proposition that many of you, and certainly your constituents, put on the ballot in the mid-1990s to restrict government spending actually requires people to identify themselves and the land parcels that they own in order to cast a vote. And Republicans put this into the state constitution. The fact of the matter is, when you boil down this debate about farm workers, opponents are afraid of one thing. It's not about the so-called secret ballot. Opponents are afraid that more farm workers will end up with collective bargaining and the benefits that go with it. This is about power, but it's also about fundamental fairness. Because the record is very clear. You talk about intimidation. The instances of intimidation because of the power relationship between large employer and poor farm worker is much greater than the prospect of intimidation by a union who is trying to help the farm worker increase their wages, increase their benefits, and attain a more safe work environment. I urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Secretary will call the roll.